Well, why don't we go ahead and get started? So again, greetings everyone, and welcome to the next session in the IlliniCloud Webinar Series featuring our friends at Authentica Solutions. My name is Jat Pannu. I'm the Business and Operations Lead for the IlliniCloud, and joining us today from Authentica is Gary Carabin. He's the Vice President of Customer Success. Now, we intend this to be an interactive session, so please do feel free to enter in your questions in the chat window. You should have a icon for accessing that chat window, and go ahead and post your questions within there, and we'll either answer them in the stride or save them for the end, depending on how the session goes. As a reminder, the IlliniCloud webinars are every Wednesday, 12 p.m. Central Time, and are posted to the IlliniCloud YouTube channel. So if you're looking for past webinars, or even this one to send on to folks, they usually get published and posted within 24 hours, and you can find them by going to YouTube and just typing in IlliniCloud, and you should see the channel right there. Upcoming webinars can be found within the announcement email. There's a queue of them. Those do change, so feel free to ping me, Jat Pannu, at lliniCloud.org if you have any questions about what the upcoming schedule is. The next webinar that we have queued up is Think Circa. That will be again next Wednesday at 12 p.m. Central Time. With that, Gary, please feel free to introduce yourself. Go ahead and start sharing your screen and get started. And I'll go ahead and stop sharing at this point.
Okay, very good. Yes, hi everybody. This is Gary Carabin with Authentica Solutions, and hopefully, can you see my screen okay?
Hasn't started sharing yet.
Okay, let me do it now, sorry.
Looks like it's starting. Yep, got it.
Okay, all right, very good, very good. Yes, thank you, Jat, and thank you for having Authentica Solutions here for your weekly webinar. On the call from Authentica Solutions, there's a couple other folks. There's actually one other person right now. Chris Snover is our Senior Director of the Data Management Solutions Group, and he's on the call with me here. Dr. Terry McEwen, I'm hopeful is going to be able to join us. He is one of our customers that is using, we have developed a data integration for Lawrence Public Schools, and I wanted to interview Terry about his experience and his working with Authentica Solutions and what the integration is doing for Lawrence Public Schools. He's having trouble getting into the webinar. He just sent me a couple different emails. Anyway, so he's still working on that, and hopefully he'll be able to join us here in a moment. He thinks that maybe his school is not allowed to use Zoom. So I'm trying to, I'll work with him here in a moment once we start into the demo that Chris is actually going to do. So that leads us into the agenda. We will provide a quick overview of Authentica Solutions, who we are, what we do, and then we'll get into an overview of our two products that we're talking about today, our two solutions for K-12 and for higher ed, the DataSense Integration tool, and then our CENTRIFUGE Data Education Warehouse product. So we'll give a PowerPoint overview of those, and then Chris is actually going to do a demonstration of both of those solutions. And as I mentioned, I'm hopeful that we can still interview Terry and Dr. McEwen about his experience at Lawrence Public Schools with implementing and using DataSense. So Authentica Solutions, our mission is to accelerate the flow of learning. And we do that through our solutions that we'll talk about here in a moment, and our people. We are dedicated to education technology. That's our only business, is working with K-12. We are working with higher ed a little bit, starting to, but all of our experiences with is in the K-12 space. We have three divisions at Authentica Solutions. We have our Data Management Solutions Group, of which Chris Snover, who's on the call with me, is the Senior Director of that group. We also provide EdTech engineering solutions, and it is basically custom software development. And an example of that is we won an RFP with Houston ISD in September of 2015 for a rewrite of their Medicaid software package. And we delivered on that project in August of 2016. They went live. And what's interesting is Houston not only manages Medicaid for their district, but for 101 other districts in the state of Texas. So it was a big project, a big deal, and again, that project went live. We have a third division called our Exceptional Learning Solutions Group, and in that group, we support two legacy special education software products, Exceed and Encore, and both of those products we acquired from Scantron, and as you'll see in a moment, our co-founders came from Scantron. And so we support those products in more than a couple, but in some large school districts like Clark County USD and San Diego USD and Marion County, Florida. And then we're also developing, and we'll be releasing in 2017, a new special education software product. So those are the three divisions that we have. But again, we're here to speak primarily about our data management solutions area and what we're doing in that area. So we'll talk about the issues that drove us into the developing out data integration and data management solutions. But first, in terms of experience, we have a lot of experience in this K through 12 space with large, medium, small districts across the United States, where in some cases we have direct relationships. In other cases, we're actually working through some of our software partners, our channel software partners, in developing out the data integrations. So we have experience at the K-12 level. We have experience with over 80 ed tech software providers. And you see on the left-hand side the different types of software where we have the experience, starting with the student information systems, but also learning management systems and digital content assessment systems. You can see the list there. And then on the right-hand side are some of the logos of the companies that are either partners or we have actually developed connectors for their software. And a lot of it is around the student information system. That is typically, of course, the system of record within an organization. And so we have worked with a lot of work with the Power Schools and Infinite Campuses and Skyward and Synergy and eSchool Plus. So we have a lot of experience across the student information systems in developing those connections, and in many cases, doing a bi-directional flow of the data. And we'll jump into that here in a moment and what that means. So quickly about our founders, Russell Long is our CEO, and Russell started his career as a high school biology teacher and football coach in Texas, and he was involved in the school district level, at the school district level for 6 years, and then he started his first software company, which he has started a couple of those. He also has experience with large organizations. As I mentioned, he was the vice president of professional services at Scantron before he started Authentica Solutions, and he ran a team of 170 different folks, professional services folks at Scantron. And it was there that he met his chief technology officer, Gene Garcia, who's our chief technology officer and his co-founder at Authentica Solutions. And Gene was responsible, he was the director of technical implementations, and it was Gene and Russell and the issues and problems they faced at Scantron in developing data integrations for school district customers that led them to the development of DataSense. So DataSense is our data integration tool. It is an iPaaS solution, so an integrated platform as a service solution for K-12, and it is and we're gonna look at it here in a moment, but it provides, you'll see, one central administrative user interface for first the building and the deploying of the integrations, but also just importantly, the managing and the monitoring of those data integrations. And so we do that. We make this web user interface available to our customers also. So you have the ability to monitor the data integrations that have been built for you at the same time. So what are we really solving with DataSense and this this data integration tool? Well, as you all probably know, there's a lot of data that's being used and collected. Apologies, sorry about that. Let me switch back here. Okay, sorry about that. So,
like we haven't talked about that. You hear me? Can you hear me? Hello?
so everybody, so the types of data that school districts deal with, of course, are everything from grades to assessments to interventions, attendance, and all that data needs to roll up from the school level to the district level, and then into the state departments of education, and then in many cases into the federal, into U.S. Department of Education. And there's different types of data. There is personally identifiable data. In some cases, we're dealing with masked, de-identified data. And then most recently, we've been dealing with a lot of data that is aggregated data at the school level. So at a school level, what we will typically see is a need for a lot of and a number of data integrations. So data flowing, again, typically student data, demographic data, course, class, teacher data from the student information system into different types of applications, whether that be the LMS or web applications or even into Medicaid state reporting. So what DataSense does is DataSense sits in the middle and acts as a traffic cop in the sense that it is able to take data from one source and deliver it to a destination, and then deliver that data back into the original source if that's something that is needed at the district level. So that's what DataSense does, and the way that we do it, and we're able to take data from different sources. So whether that be we like to work with APIs, but we also work with XML files and CSV files. And so we're taking data in from lots of different sources into DataSense. So we retrieve it, we filter it, we run it through a pre-validation, and then we take the source data, the source schema, transform it over to the destination schema, and then run through a post-validation package, deliver it up. And what's nice is we deliver it back out in the way that the ingesting system wants to receive the data. So again, if it's in an API, we deliver it that way, or we can deliver an XML file or put it out there for a CSV file ingestion into the new system. So again, we'll take a look at that in a moment here. So we, just a couple other quick points about DataSense is that it's a federated engine. We're delivering data across the platform. And so it means that we're not storing data in the cloud. So we know that that's important to school districts, that data is not stored. So the data privacy is a primary focus. Also, it's important to note that through the pre and post validation, it's really what we used in the transformation to ensure that the quality and the integrity of the data that's being moved back and forth. And we can identify errors fairly quickly and get to the source of those errors through the validation and the transformation that we use. We also, something that's unique to Authentica Solutions is the education-based project management system that we used called AIM. the adoption improvement method. And this was developed specifically for the education space to ensure that projects run smoothly within for Authentica Solution. So the adoption improvement method has 11 different factors that we follow. And our goal is that what we have found is that in many cases, some aspects of these factors get skipped in projects, but we follow this adoption improvement method all the way through the project, even for data integrations, to ensure that, again, we've got a smooth integration process and that we're all set to go. We have a second product that we mentioned in the overview that we sent out about Authentica Solutions, CENTRIFUGE. And CENTRIFUGE is our education data warehouse. And it is a tool, an education warehouse that is used to bring all data elements into one data stream following the Common Education Data Standards format, the CEDS format. And what is great about the solution is that once the data is in CENTRIFUGE, then districts can define the combined data elements and deliver the data to state reporting, dashboards, and analytics. And again, we'll show a demonstration of this capability, but this is basically what's happening. So we've got all kinds of data sitting out there. Through DataSense, we're bringing the data into CENTRIFUGE, and then once the data is in CENTRIFUGE, then we can normalize the data, we can standardize the data, and we can deliver it within CENTRIFUGE, and we can also deliver it using third-party visualization tools like Power BI and Looker and Answer Rocket are some of the ones that we've worked with. So that's what CENTRIFUGE is all about. And to give you another example, Central Access is one of our channel partners. They're a student information system primarily in the state of Mississippi. So we're able to take data from their student information system, from a financial package they have called Marathon Financial Package, from different assessment systems, and via DataSense, bring all this data into CENTRIFUGE, and then produce the dashboards and reports and analytical information using, again, some of this, and we'll show this, can be done in CENTRIFUGE itself or in other visualization tools. So that's basically the kind of the overview of the product. So I think with that we will jump over and do a demonstration of DataSense and CENTRIFUGE. So Chris, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and then you'll be able to take it.
Excellent. Thanks, Gary. Okay, everybody hopefully can see this dashboard screen now. Can everybody see that all right?
Yes.
Thank you. So this is DataSense. So as Gary mentioned, DataSense is going to be our primary integration tool that we use, our iPaaS solution. DataSense's most common implementation is for a point-to-point connection. So we're basically extracting data from a source system, and we're delivering that data after it's been repackaged and validated to the destination system. Now, DataSense is technology agnostic, as Gary mentioned, so we can certainly bend to whatever is available through those systems to extract and deliver that data. So once you log into DataSense, the first thing you're greeted with is this dashboard screen. So this is basically comprised of customizable widgets. You can move them around. You can certainly remove and add widgets. The reason that we handled it this way is we understand that typically the support person doesn't need access to the same information as, maybe your sys administrator or a DBA. So they're able to select the widgets that really make sense to them. In addition to the graphical view, we also get into text-based views. So for example, here with the validation errors and warnings, These are screens that would actually give your sys administrator, for example, some information about why there was an error with this without having to pour through a lengthy log like those individuals typically have to do as part of their job. Once you get past the dashboard, you get into the navigation area of the command center within DataSense. So along the left-hand side, you can see some of the partners that we have listed out. Some of these are our partner channels. In addition, obviously, some of our, educational entities that we've made up. The middle column is going to be your customers. So typically, this would be a particular district. We're going to look at one here today called Sales Demo. One of the things that we've done that really allows us to speed along the integration is we're actually defining your systems within DataSense. So for example, here we have basically picking up a flat file from an FTP server and dropping a file after it's been transformed back off. So as you can see here, all the data is encrypted, but we can store all of that information, the URL, the IP address, if that's applicable, certainly the username and password in the file that we're going to collect. So that allows any additional integration jobs that are built to really just be references back to these destination and source systems. The integration jobs are the last thing that are listed out here in this column on the right. We'll take a look at a student integration job. So within the integration job screen, you can obviously define the systems as we just talked about. So instead of actually having to go in and enter all of that information, it's really just selecting those from a drop list, which really speeds the integration process along. In addition, you can schedule these jobs for any schedule that fits your needs. Certainly the different parameters that are available are the standard, day, minute, hour, week, month, year options. This allows us a lot of flexibility. So for example, if you have assessments that are only delivered a couple of times a year, these can be scheduled out accordingly, and you're not continually hitting the system for data that's not really going to change. In addition, we have the system to the point where it can run an integration job about every minute, whereas that isn't really necessary a lot. Most of them just run overnight. We can, run those multiple times throughout the day to meet anybody's needs. The schedule status really just pertains to whether this job is going to be running on its schedule or not. It's either just active or paused. We get a lot of requests that over the summer, because the sys isn't really going to be changing, that we pause these jobs for a couple of months, and that's as easy as just selecting that from this feature. Once we get into the data flow screen, this is really where we start to customize the integration. So as Gary mentioned, we have a number of different components that are out there. And what we refer to as a component is basically a piece of this puzzle. So the first thing obviously it's doing is going out and getting that file from the FTP server. We'll take a look at the validation component real quick here, because that's an easy one for people to kind of understand in our world. What happens here is we can take this validation component and list it multiple times throughout the process. That way you can validate your data as soon as it's extracted. You can also validate that data again before it's actually pushed out to your system that's ingesting the data. That way you can run pre-validation, post-validation. We also have filter components that allow us to filter out a specific school, or really filter out data based on any specific criteria that you don't want going into your third-party system or coming back to the sys. So for these validations, as you can see, it's really quite an easy metric to implement here. The student ID, and we just have stated that this is required with an exclamation point following it. What this is going to do is it's just going to throw a message into the log anytime that a student ID is not present for a record that we get back out of the sys. Now we can also change that. If you had 2 exclamation marks, the entire integration job would stop based on a validation message. And we have a number of different methods we can implement there as well. So with this integration, it's just going to then transform the data, which would bring it down to this template. The template allows us to really set any kind of mapping, any kind of modifications to that data. So for example, from a gender perspective, if male is what is logged in your sys, but the accepting system or the system ingesting that data wants an M, we can make all of those transformations. In addition, we can get pretty complex in our transformations as well. So we can even get to the point where for a user experience, we are now concatenating a teacher's name on the end of a section in a course code, for example. And that way, when you search within the system, the teacher just needs to search their name and they can identify those entries very quickly and easily. The execution screen is going to show you all of the previous executions of this job, both manual and scheduled integrations. In addition, it's going to give you some nice features in the logs, for example. If we look at the validation rule that we had just set up there, we actually get a really quick validation report that we typically can send back to the district. This will identify records that failed validation, and is where sometimes we can fix these in the transformation. Really, this enables the district to go back and fix these things in the SIS. So it really gives a nice consolidated list of items that may need to be adjusted. And then continuing on, we also have a very robust alerts process. So we have staff that start working at 2:30 in the morning, just because that's the time of night that integration jobs typically run. So if any integration job fails for any reason, we're actually able to identify that and reach out to the district. We've even had instances where we've known about system outages and alerted them before they even knew there was an issue on their side. So it's a really nice system to make sure that these integrations remain up and running. And then finally, just the Schedule Now button would allow you to implement or execute any of these integrations on demand. So are there any questions about DataSense? Okay. We'll take a moment and we'll dive into just some of the high-level overview of some of the dashboard functionality that we have out there at this point. These are some of the assessment dashboards that we have available. So as you can see here, you're ingesting multiple systems. We're ingesting all that data through DataSense. So DataSense really enables us to get the data into the system in the format that it needs to be in, as well as the validation, making sure that there's that level of data cleanliness. So moving into the standards section of this assessment, what this is basically going to tell this teacher is that their current proficiency is at about 7%. Within this, we also have drill down capabilities, so the teachers can come in and look at the specific courses they offer and how the students are weighted against that proficiency for each quarter that's available. Within the assessments option, we can also go in and look at some drill down capabilities. Hovering over this, again, gives you the assessment that's available. We can get into some proficiency percentage as well as the date that it's offered. And then drilling down into these screens, we can actually look at each student and how they were measured against that achieved proficiency standard. So as Gary mentioned, we actually have a number of different options out there that are going to allow us to really work well with a number of different dashboards, as well as our capabilities across different analytics platforms. So this is another dashboard offering that we've implemented numerous times. This is actually the EdFi dashboard, and this is a relationship that we have with EdFi that allows us to push these out into districts. The EdFi dashboards give you some really good data as it pertains to your student. Of course, these are all permission-based, so you're capable of looking at your students as a teacher. At the district level, for example, a superintendent would be able to look at more student data and certainly the statistical information that's available for these students. So just real quick high-level overview here. This is just a demo school that was set up. This identifies at this district that there's one high school, one middle school, and one elementary school. You'd be able to drill down into each of these schools just by clicking on the information that's available. These screens are all highly customizable. You can add additional data, remove the columns of data that you wanted to look at as well, and again, drill down capabilities into the specific students. And this is, again, just another example of a dashboard that's powered by DataSense and then Centrifuge. So we're bringing that data from the district, from all the disparate systems, into Centrifuge using DataSense so that we can really give everybody a nice dashboard, a nice graphical representation of what this data that's being collected by the district truly shows. Gary?
Are we transitioning back, Chris, are we transitioning back to Gary?
I believe so. Gary, are you there?
Sorry about that. I was muted. Sorry. What I was saying, Chris, is that there is a question in the chat window regarding how is authentication to reports managed?
No, and that's a great question. So we've implemented, the authentication parameters in a couple of different ways. Ideally for us, if you have those roles defined at the district level, either in one of your systems like a SIS, or if those roles are defined in LDAP, we would ingest that role information so we know whether it's a teacher, superintendent, and then once we ingest that role information, there is a set of security permissions tied to that user so that they will only have access to the individual items that they should be looking at. So if it's a teacher, they can only look at their classrooms. Obviously, at the superintendent level, they can see everything that occurs at the district. And then I think the other question that was along the same lines there is any clients using Tableau server with your DataSense data source. So Tableau really as a reports engine would fit in with Centrifuge. We do have users that are using Tableau. And really that's the idea of Centrifuge is we will certainly be more than happy to make some recommendations like Power BI and Looker that we've used in the past. But at the end of the day, it's really just a robust ODS and a great EDW, electronic data warehouse. So if you have your own personal preferences, if you have staff on site who are already well versed in those products, it's really just hooking up that analytics or that reporting platform with the ODS and EDW that are available within Centrifuge. And I think that's it for questions. Are there any others on the line?
I don't see any additional questions. Oh, here comes some. How does licensing and cost work for the product suite? End-to-end or piecemealed around the existing assets?
I think, Gary, you're probably best suited to handle this one.
Yeah. So the costing and the licensing, that I think those questions would go to Jat eventually. Once we complete our business arrangement with IlliniCloud, so we would work with Jat to set up the licensing and the pricing, and then that would come out to you guys.
Great, thank you, Gary. And can you just, for the other districts that you worked with, just so people get a barn versus breadbasket kind of sizing, typically what is the kind of range for the pricing and how that's done?
Yeah, so the pricing is typically based on a per student basis, and it depends a little bit on volume, but it can be, there are two components to it. There's a per student, and then there's a one-time services fee. And the one-time services fee can range somewhere around $2,500 to maybe $5,000, and then a per student fee of anywhere from 50 cents to $1.50 per student. And again, it depends a little bit on volume and our arrangement.
Okay, great. Thank you. I think that's very helpful in terms of kind of giving people a, finger in the wind kind of sizing on what it takes. We have a follow-up question that's kind of along the same vein. This comes from Brian Tobin. What is the typical time it takes to spin it up once agreement is signed and data is flowing from the district?
Yeah, Chris, do you want to take that one?
Sure, absolutely. So if we're talking about a point-to-point integration, so basically, just using DataSense or extracting data from the SIS, we're delivering that data in its proper format to a third-party system, that's usually a couple of weeks. Our time on that is significantly less, but there's usually some items to work through, account management, things like that. Certainly the UAT process and data validation is part of that as well. For an integration with CENTRIFUGE, that would depend greatly upon the amount of volume that you want to look at. If that's some pretty simple data and you guys want to generate reports, that's usually, again, within that couple of week framework. If you wanted to look at something like the EdFi dashboards, that's typically a couple of months. You're talking about, as far as integration jobs go, there's typically 40 or 50 different integration jobs that have to be built out. And then, obviously a significant amount of data that needs to be ingested to really fully populate those dashboards. And really that's the two different, ends of the spectrum as they go there.
Great, thank you. We have a follow-up question that from Lisa Behrman. Can you connect to existing data warehouses? And if so, how?
So we can, yes. So, and really this is done again through DataSense. So with DataSense, it does not matter to us, really what the system is. So two of the options that weren't shown on Gary's slide were direct database connections. Certainly data warehouses would be included there as well. And then the other one would be, our smart script process. So there's a number of products out there that perhaps they'll have like an ad hoc query screen embedded in the UI. So you have to navigate through a few screens to get there. So what our smart script process would do is actually mimic that mouse movement and button clicking to get to the ad hoc query screen, and then we could execute our query from there. So that just gives us a lot of options. Now, as far as CENTRIFUGE actually just sitting on top of a data warehouse and those analytics, things like that, we typically don't do that. And that's just because it's significantly less time for us to actually set up DataSense so that we can ingest that data. And it's typically a lot cleaner to handle it that way as well.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Additional questions?
And by the way, I think, Terry, are you on the call with us?
I am now on the call. Sorry to be late.
Okay, yeah, no problem. Okay, yeah, and so, I mean, we can take additional questions. I also have, again, Dr. Terry McEwen from Lawrence Public Schools on the call with us, and Terry is the Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment at USD 497, which is Lawrence Public Schools out in Lawrence, Kansas. And Terry has experience in working with Authentica Solutions and Blackboard. He's actually he's a Blackboard customer, and Blackboard is one of our channel partners. And we developed an integration for Lawrence Public Schools through Blackboard and working with Terry. So we invited Terry into the call. We thought it would be good to just chat with him a little bit about his experience in working with Authentica and Blackboard and completing the integration. But maybe, Terry, we could start at a high level, and maybe you could tell us about the challenges that you were looking to solve when you were starting the integration.
So initially, we were attempting to get Blackboard and our student information system to coordinate efforts in order to prevent teachers from having to double enter grades. So they were administering quizzes or tests or essays or whatever within Blackboard as part of their class, and then they would score that within the Blackboard gradebook, but then they would have to re-enter all of those grades into our grade card system in the student information system. We worked for probably a year trying to get our SIS and Blackboard to come up with a solution to that issue, and were completely unsuccessful. Once Authentica came along, and we were able to then seamlessly integrate our gradebook transfer from Blackboard to our student information system. Since that time, we've increased our use of Blackboard by teachers because they were shying away from it because of the double entry of grades, and we've actually seen a lot more productivity in terms of teachers using Blackboard to craft quizzes and tests, etc., because they know that the data will transfer without them having to do double work.
Okay, all right, good, good. So can you tell us about your experience with the integration?
So the integration went very smoothly. Once the student information system was understood by Authentica, and we knew how to transfer the gradebooks back and forth, it really was very painless and has been now working for us for a little over a year. So we've been using this for a little over a year and have had few issues of any kind, and if there are any, they're solved very quickly. The only significant issues are created by teachers who will name something in Blackboard one thing and then name it in the gradebook on Skyward, our student information system, something else, and then the system doesn't know how to transfer it. But we've been able to solve each of those issues on the fly and not have any major issues at all.
Okay, good, good. So is there, can you, how did the implementation process go, once you decided to move ahead with the integration, and as far as working with Authentica Solutions, and then also with Blackboard, who was of course, your LMS?
Right. So once we made the decision to go with this solution, our IT department became involved in setting up the transfer protocols, or whatever, the background information from our student information system, so that was set up appropriately, and then worked with Blackboard so that they would know, so that it was very clear how we would transfer the grading from one system to the other. So the implementation process was pretty easily accomplished. Our district IT engineer worked closely with Authentica to do all of the setups that we needed to do on our end of the student information system, and then Authentica worked with Blackboard to ensure the stream was clear. And since then, it's just been kind of magic to me, because I don't have to do anything. I don't even have to think much about it. It just happens pretty easily.
Great, great. Okay, good. And I know you touched on this earlier, Terry, when you talked a little bit about grades going back from Blackboard into the student information system. But what other kinds of types of data are you sharing between Skyward and Blackboard Learn?
Right now, we're sharing some demographic information, but mostly at this point it has been grades. Our hope is to make this a little more robust, because I think we can get, again, we're guarding a little bit against 1,000 free LMSs out there that teachers would love to use. Why would they go through all the work of using Blackboard as an example? Well, one of our selling points, unquote, is that the whole gradebook transfer integration piece is a huge reason to use Blackboard Learn as opposed to just using Google Classroom or something like that. So we are wanting to explore even richer integrations that would populate additional student information back to Blackboard so the teachers would have more to work with.
Okay, but today, when you say demographic information, so you're pulling out the student demographic information, probably class information, and bringing that from the SIS, from Skyward, over into Blackboard Learn, and you're updating the grades back into the student information system. Is that basically what you're doing? Yeah.
That's basically what we're doing. The other thing that has been remarkably helpful about Authentica or DataSense is that as classes change or as students change so for example, in a high school, students will transfer from one teacher to another teacher or from one period to another period, and Authentica picks up those switches from our student information system and resorts them so that we don't have to add new kids by hand. They're added automatically as we start a new school year. As an example, we start with a whole new set of classes, but Authentica pulls all of those class lists and all of the teacher information, etc., automatically over the summer, populates those within Blackboard, and we don't have to touch anything. It's already pre-set up.
Great, and that probably saves a lot of time.
It saves, I can't even begin to tell you the man hours it saves, because we were having to go in and hand change kids. If they switched from Mrs. Jones' first period to Mrs. Smith's second period, we would have to go in and move the kid by hand. And now it just happens overnight in a data transfer, and we don't have to ever think about it.
Okay, very good. So Terry, I know that the integration has been running for probably a year and a half now, close to a year and a half. How's everything been going for it?
There have been very few issues, and some of the issues that have happened tend to be human error on our end, where we've had some teachers that go in and again they'll name something incorrectly, or we had one issue where students were put into the wrong, we had a teacher that was actually added so that they made a third, fourth grade section, and we couldn't initially populate it with those kids. Once we alerted DataSense that was the issue, it was corrected within 24 hours in an overnight process, and that was fixed. So I would say in the main, the whole year and a half has been incredibly smooth sailing. We've had really great response. If we do run into a snag, we get interactions within probably an hour to an hour and a half at the most. We get things fixed, so it's not been a problem at all.
Okay, all right, great. And I know we're running close to the time allotted here. Anything else, Terry, that you'd like to share in terms of your experiences with Authentica Solutions and the data integration?
Well, I think the most important thing is that in order to actually have a robust learning management system that teachers will actually use, it has to be accurate from their view. And that's what Authentica has really helped us get to happen. When they can see the correct students in their classes, when they can see move outs, move ins, etc., all taken care of, they don't have to think about it, and we don't have to think about it. So it has been an incredible time saver. It's efficient, and again, the fewer human hands that touch this data, the more accurate the data is. And so that's been another really huge help, is that we don't have to go in and misspell some kid's name. It transfers it automatically, and I think that's worth a lot.
Okay, great. All right, Terry, thanks so much for your participation and for your answers here to these questions. Jat, I'm sorry, Jat, go ahead.
No, thank you so much, Dr. McEwen. That was very valuable and really gives us a real world example of kind of what the strengths and power of DataSense can provide to the districts. Another question just came in. Is there integration with Canvas, and is the licensing affordable such that we can allow teachers to access the data when needed without breaking the bank?
Okay. All right. Well, so we have done integrations with Canvas. So we've done integrations with Canvas, with Blackboard Learn, with Schoology, so the major LMSs. Typically, the licensing is, the way the licensing is set up is that it's on a per student basis. So, and then anybody within the district, well, I guess the question is, so for the most part, I don't think teachers need to access anything. DataSense is acting in the cloud. It's basically taking the data from one source, and the example that Terry was talking about at Lawrence is it's taking the data from Skyward and it's delivering it to Blackboard Learn, and then it's taking the grades, the results, back in from Blackboard Learn into Skyward. So I don't think, Terry, in your case, teachers are not accessing anything, are they, with DataSense?
No, they're not. They don't have to mess with any of that. So it's happening in the background automatically, so they don't have to. To them, it just happens like a magic trick because they're unaware of what's going on in the background. So they don't have to. It requires no action on the part of teachers.
Right. Okay. And the kind of the overall question is if the licensing is affordable. Yes, and we'll work with Jat in getting that set up.
Great. And again, it's on the order of magnitude of, the $1.50 or 50 cents to $1.50. So the details will be forthcoming. And again, for more information, please don't hesitate to reach out to me at Jat Pannu at lliniCloud.org. That's been posted in the chat, so people don't have to try to scramble to keep up with how fast I said it. Additional questions or comments? We've got about 5 minutes left.
If you don't mind, I'll jump in and actually ask a verbal question versus trying to type it here. It really does seem that an implementation for a district is a challenging scenario no matter how you approach it, because it is really an integration, and the descriptions that you provided were a source system to a destination system. But I think that the reality of the world is that there are a number of source systems that need to be consistently maintained in some sort of an accessible platform like your CENTRIFUGE that provides visual access to data, that provides the ability to perform the ETL operations that it's done in the DataSense. So it doesn't sound like those are really two separate products, even though those functionalities can be delegated to other packages, but your intent is to use both. So in this arrangement for $1 to $1.50 per student on a student count, this is an annual fee that it sounds like to own or utilize the product, but the implementation and the integration really sounds like it's labor intensive. There's also a professional development curve that needs to be addressed for the users in the IT department, as well as those teachers that are identifying the problems that need to be solved. It just sounds like it's far more potentially engaging than unpackage this software, install it on a machine, and you're good to go. There is a question in all of that, I guess,
Yeah, no, this is Gary. Those are some good comments, some astute comments, and I guess so. First of all, let's say the $1 to the $1.50. So for some of our districts and for many of our districts, we're just moving the data. We're not storing the data, which is what CENTRIFUGE is doing in the Data Education Warehouse. But for many, many of our customers, we're just doing the integration, and that's what we've done for Lawrence Public Schools with Dr. McEwen, and that's what we were talking about there. So and there is, of course, labor involved. Once we set up an integration, for example, between, in this example, Skyward and Blackboard Learn, we've got these library components that we can reuse when we do it again. So that helps reduce the amount of time that is needed to complete the integration. And while it's not completely a self-service type of program, it does reduce the amount of time to get the integrations running. But your comments were also around Centrifuge and getting data into an education data warehouse, and then what happens with that data when it gets in there. And that is more labor intensive, and that is different pricing than what we're talking about with the data integration.
Right, right. If I might, just to focus the answer in a particular direction, let's say, for instance, there was a scenario that involved Skyward or some other student information system on the back end, and the goal is actually EdFi. There was a quote mentioned of, hey, that's only a couple of months worth of effort. I know states that are working on this for a year now, and they don't have a dashboard that's up and running in a functional capacity for more than 1 or 2 school districts. So that sounds like it's awfully reaching, potentially, but I could be gravely wrong, and I'm just trying to understand better how that might actually work and what kind of money is involved in order to look at utilizing these products to do something as sophisticated as providing the EdFi style dashboard to school districts as a product.
Chris, do you want to? I'll address the kind of the money side. Chris, if you want to address the amount of work in that question.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think we as an organization probably experienced some of those same challenges the first time that we implemented the EdFi dashboards. Obviously, after you've done it once, you've learned a lot about that process. And that's why we're able to really reduce that to a couple of months. In addition, through our work and different integrations, we've probably touched all those data elements in Skyward. So now just, Skyward to an LMS, for example, you wouldn't have touched all of them. But we, through all the different variety of integrations we've done, we've come into contact with almost all of those. And really that's where our services offering comes into play, and that we build out those jobs. We use those redeployable components that Gary had mentioned, that we've already written these things. So it goes from being a very complex integration to drag and drop and a couple of modifications to meet your custom instance of Skyward.
Okay.
Go ahead.
If I could ask, though, your implication is that you guys can do that real quickly because you have those resources at your disposal. So you're providing the resource basically as a freebie, but your knowledge in terms of utilizing the software is what you're paying for in professional services. So it's not a focus on training a district to be self-sufficient, but rather to be able to solve problems quickly for things that are easily identifiable and communicatable to a professional staff that's on your payroll.
That's correct.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And really that's where we feel we've approached it a number of different ways. So there are districts that handle their own integrations. We have partner channels that do their own integrations. But really the accelerant in all of this is our staff in addition to our tool set. So really when your staff logs into DataSense, it's probably going to be significantly less about doing a data integration and more about just monitoring. So, if student John Smith doesn't make it over in that nightly run, you guys would log in, look through DataSense, and there would be a clear indication of why that student didn't make it in.
Absolutely, and quite. Yeah, absolutely, and that sounds great because, quite frankly, from a district perspective, those mechanical pieces are not what we care about, but because of the economics of these types of relationships, often we have to care about them, and even though that's not voluntary, it's necessary. So this sounds like a good thing, and looking at the little template that you showed in the job executioner in your presentation, it appears that the code is basically Python based maybe, or Python-like, which may or may not be something that is within the tool chest of most IT departments at a school district.
That's correct. So it's all Ruby based, and really at the district level, all you guys would be modifying is, just identifying what type of validation would be required, for example. But like I said, you know, all that heavy lifting is done by us during that integration process.
Right, right. So when a school district does integrate with you, there's that licensing cost that we're talking about at $1 to $1.50. But these professional services sound like something that also needs to be addressed, at least in ballparks. I mean, in terms of a school district integration, is that a $10,000 effort or is it a $5,000 effort? You mentioned a $5,000 number before, but that was only point to point.
Right. Yeah, and again, we'd have to look at the specifics, but it probably is in that $5,000 range.
Okay, to do an EdFi dashboard in 2 months?
I'm sorry, I misunderstood the question. And
Okay, I mean, that's basically the core of my question. If I want to do an EdFi dashboard or something equivalent, meaning I want to suck the data out of my student information system and display it somehow or use it somehow, what am I looking at doing with that? The EdFi dashboard is a good example of it because it's pretty verbose.
Right. But yeah, we have projects ranging from that in the data analytics side from $10,000 up to $200,000.
Okay, that's good enough. That's good enough. You know, at least from this perspective, because there's a lot of fine tuning in the question before you can legitimately give an answer. But that's basically the finger in the wind type of thing. That covers my core questions in terms of what's been presented. I do like the product. I do like the way that it looks, and you guys have done a tremendous job in terms of helping to instrument the interfaces that are necessary to do ETL operations and build graph widgets, which is what you've shown us today. That's fantastic.
Okay, good. Well, we appreciate your participation, and we can work back through Jat if there's interest on your part in continuing the conversation.
Absolutely. Okay, we're a bit over time, so unless there's any final questions or comments, I'll pause there. Give folks an opportunity to ask any questions or make any comments. Okay, if not, once again, thank you so much, Gary and Chris, as well as Dr. McEwen, for your time today. And this webinar, along with past webinars, will be posted to YouTube IlliniCloud channel that I've posted into the chat for reference. And if you have any questions, please reach out to me, Jat Pannu at lliniCloud.org, also in the chat. And with that, I'd like to do one final thank you for everybody in their time, and wish you a wonderful day.
Okay, thank you, Jat. Thank you for having us.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.